All right. Well, I am ready when you all are ready. So you tell me go, and we'll get started.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, you're good to go.
All right, good deal. Well, hello everyone. I'm Tisha Johnson, Senior Director of Admissions for ICO. And as we were chatting about a few minutes ago, we have one of our fourth year students here with me, and her name is Sarah. She actually spent, I would say, the last 3 years working with the admissions team, working in our office, helping us with events like this, as well as our interview days here on campus and virtually. So throughout the presentation, I will ask Sarah to chime in and share her experiences because I know for students, you want to know what it's like once you're inside of optometry school and specifically what it's like to be at ICO. So I will go ahead and get my share screen going. Oh, can you, it says it's disabled for me. Can you update that for me? Um, and so, like I said earlier, if you have any questions at any point, you're more than welcome to reach out to the admissions team, and we will be more than happy to assist you. And at the end of the presentation, I do have my contact information or our team's contact information. All right, so it looks like it's sharing. So good deal. So just a little bit about myself. I've been at ICO for 16 and a half years. It'll be 17 years in February. I serve on the admissions committee. I do admissions interviews. I'm responsible for recruiting. So really anything relating to prospective students, pretty much up until students get here for orientation. Our team is the folks that handle that. So you're going to be working closely with myself, Latasha Jackson, or Serena Stoker. So a little bit about ICO. We're the largest optometry school, and oldest optometry school in the country. We have alumni all over the United States as well as Canada. We do have a heavy Canadian population. Majority of students, I would say, are from Ontario, but we get quite a few students from the other provinces as well. So I would encourage you if you have more questions, you can connect with Sarah, or I can even put you in contact with our Canadian Student Association that we have here on campus. I always encourage students to also shout out ICO alum because they're the ones who are now benefiting from that ICO education. So if you have questions for them, want to get their thoughts as an alum, looking back on that time at ICO, you can reach out to our office if you don't know of any ICO alum, and we'll be happy to put you in contact with some. And what we're known for at ICO is our clinical education. So the Illinois Eye Institute is actually connected to this building. The patient interest is on the other side. And we'll talk a little bit about the II a little bit later, but what I want to do is talk a little bit about the curriculum. So give you a general overview of what you can expect in your 4 years here at ICO. So year one, you're going to come into a different system. We're on the quarter system. So instead of 16 weeks, our terms are actually 12 weeks, and they're composed of 10 weeks of classes, a week of final, and then a break week. And then you progress on to the next quarter. But it's still sort of that August to May timeline. So it's not as if you have additional time or less time in school. It still follows so that traditional format. That first year, you're going to have a lot of the basic science courses. So a lot of anatomy, optics, biochemistry. So I always encourage students to, at the undergraduate level, at the university level, make sure you're doing heavy science loads. And I don't think that's a problem. I would say for most Canadian applicants that I've seen, they are typically doing, multiple science courses together throughout their curriculum. So that helps you to prepare for the load that you're going to find at ICO. We do offer students that opportunity to start getting that clinical experience early in the program. When I started 17 years ago, first years were just doing observations once a quarter, and they were piloting having honors students start working in the clinic in second year. So fast forward, now we have students getting hands-on experience starting the second term and winter quarter of first year, actually working with third years and getting hands-on experience. And we'll talk about how that progresses as we go from year to year. Now, typically in our program, you do have the summer off between year 1 and 2. And so most students will, go home. Some may stay in the Chicagoland area, but we have two academic programs that are on campus. First, our accelerated clinic program, and that started maybe, oh my gosh, I feel like 8 or 9 years ago, if not longer, where students who are rising second year students can apply for and they get accepted to participate in this program, take additional coursework over the summer, and then start getting clinical experience as partners. So you'll be partnering with the fellow student in the program, and then you're going to be in a clinic providing clinical care. Now, one of the benefits is that you get additional time in clinic, and when you get back to school in August, you're going to be seeing patients by yourself. For those who may not be interested in that, but maybe have a love of research, you have the option of doing a research program over the summer. A couple of benefits of that program is that you're going to get a housing stipend, so you don't have to worry about where you're going to live. We'll place you in our RC complex at no charge to you. And then you also get a financial stipend as well during the program. So that sort of offsets some of the expenses related to, being in Chicago and possibly having to work to, stay in the city to do the clinical program. So those are, sort of some of the things that go on. But like I said, most students between year 1 and 2 take the summer off, take a break. It's been a demanding year, and so they're looking maybe to even use some of those skills to go work in the OD's office or just take a break and relax, knowing that when they get back to school in August, they're going to be in school year round. Now, Sarah, I'll have you chime in here in terms of sort of that first year experience, what it was like from you sort of transitioning from Canada to the US, what school was like in terms of the loads and any advice you may have for the members of the club.
Yeah, so I think that the transition into first year, the hardest part was kind of just like technical things, getting a new phone plan, obviously figuring out how you're going to get your loan, things like that. But I feel like once I was there, I like obviously it's a different workload. It's grad school, so it's going to be a lot more material, a lot faster pace. But I didn't feel like I was underprepared coming in from a Canadian undergrad. Yeah, and then like I said, once it was like the first month of getting everything kind of organized with like just the little things, I was fine. Like in second year, I didn't have to like get a new phone plan. Like it was a lot easier transitioning into second year. I feel like obviously when you start first year, it's kind of just like so much is going on, like living in a new city. Chicago is also a little bit of a culture shock for us Canadians, I feel. So that was another thing. And you're meeting new friends at the beginning. So it's overall just like a little overwhelming. So I know a lot of people maybe like struggle with the workload for those first few months, but then you get your groove and you figure out what works for you as far as the exams and the workload. And then second year is like a much easier transition going into second year, even though it's actually like harder material. You just are kind of know what you're doing a little bit. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I didn't feel unprepared. And it's all this is the thing. I feel offers work study positions, which is great for Canadians because we can't work in America anyways. Not that you really have much time to like get a part-time job, but even if you wanted to, work at a restaurant or a grocery store or something on the weekends, we can't with our visa. So it's good with ICO. We're able to work and make a little bit of American money, which I know no other American school offers that. So that was something that I actually didn't know of before I applied to ICO until I came for my interview day. And then once I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, and there's a lot of work study positions. They're easy. They're fun. It's kind of a nice break. Like Isha said, I've been working with the admissions since first year. And it's kind of a nice break sometimes from like your studies to just be, interacting with people, or you're like doing a security job, you're seeing people walk in. It's just kind of a nice break. And then, yeah, you get paid. So that's an awesome option for Canadians, which I know no other American schools offer. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I forgot to note, of course, I think you guys know this. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those as we're going along. So this picture you see is actually of our lecture center. So this is the room open. It does divide into three different parts. So we can have three different classes going on simultaneously. So you'll spend a lot of time definitely in the lecture during your first year. And this is one of two of our iPods. And so you definitely will spend a lot of time here as you're starting to learn your optometry skills, and then also practicing your optometry skills on your colleagues during the program. I have Sarah talk a little bit about practicals once I finish this second year slide. So in year two, like I said, you start in August, you'll be doing year round. So your summers, so that following summer, you'll be a third year student, and then the next summer, you'll be a fourth year. So you go to year round school. Um, a lot of your education is going to be clinically based. You're going to continue working in your labs, and I didn't mention this in the first during the first year, but in the program as a class, you will have your lectures together, and then your labs are going to be much smaller labs. Labs are going to be usually between about 20 students to maybe 26, just depending on how large our class size is. And so typically this professor who teaches the course also teaches the lab. So you have that continuity in education, but it also affords you the opportunity to get to know your professors. I know some students, are concerned about having a larger class size. Do I get a chance to know my professors? Honestly, you do, but it's also a two-way street. So it just depends on, um, how engaged you are. And there are going to be some people who you click with in terms of, oh, this person's really cool. We have a lot of things in common. Maybe they end up being your boss later. They hire you as a TA for their course. Maybe you end up doing a research project with them. So you really still get to engage with your faculty. So I always encourage students to do so if you can. And the same thing with staff. We get a chance to, work with students like Sarah throughout their time in the program, and then in some cases be able to follow them and still keep up with them, once they graduate from the program as well. So you, because we're a small institution, you still get that family feel, if you will. But in second year, so you continue your care in primary care. So you're going to be seeing patients now as a second year with a fellow second year. So you do teamwork essentially. So usually one student serves as the student clinician, the other the student scribe, and this will be for 3 quarters. What was started last cycle, so sorry, not last cycle, but last school year. So in fall of 2021, academic administration chose to make that third quarter, that would be your spring quarter, typically starting at the end of February, an opportunity for second years to see patients by themselves. So once a week, you're seeing patients as a second year by yourself. Do know all the patient work that you're going to be doing, of course, is under the watchful eye of our attendings that are in the clinic, but it gives you as a student an opportunity to progress from first year, you're working with a third year. Second year, it's you and one of your colleagues, and then being able to start seeing patients by yourself before fully seeing patients in your third year, multiple days a week within the clinic, and you're going to be by yourself. And then second year, you're going to be in the eyewear center, so you're going to be helping patients select frames, helping them with their lenses, and it gives you an opportunity, especially for those who maybe I know the pandemic has been hard for a lot of people to maybe get jobs and opportunities and get some experience working in the OD's office. So it'd be nice if you don't have any to have that opportunity to work in our eyewear center and sort of see that side of optometry. So Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit about what practicals are like and what the second year in clinic is like when you're partnering with a fellow student.
Mhm. Yeah, so practicals, you have one after every quarter, starting in first year, and they really mirror how the NBEO practicals are going to be. So we have 3 practical rooms, which is identical to the NBEO practical centers, which is good because you get used to that environment right away. So I feel like as you go on through the years and you're doing practicals in that room, the fear, like the anxiety goes down a little bit. And then whatever you do your practical on for the 1 quarter, the next quarter you're technically checked off to perform in clinic. So like she said, in first year, you are with the third year. So they're watching you do the skill, and then you're getting checked off by them. I also think that's really good too, because you don't feel maybe as intimidated in front of the patient when it's just a third year versus sometimes obviously attendings can be a little intimidating. And then in second year, you are with another student, which also I think is good as well, because it's typically someone in your class. And like she was saying about the class size, I don't think it's too big. I think it's honestly perfect. I feel like if it was smaller, it wouldn't be as like fun. I feel like it's a perfect size. We still all know each other, like even with the upper years. Like she said, ICO is a really community family environment, and I felt that on my interview day. I actually brought my mom on my interview day, and she's like, I like the school better than Waterloo, which is the only Canadian one. And for my Canadian mom to say that, and I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, like everyone just is nice here. Like they all know what they're doing. Like everyone's on your team. All the faculty is on your team. So it's a nice environment. But yeah, so being in second year with your colleague in your year is also nice too, because you kind of learn off of each other. You have help if you like forget something or you blank, you have someone there. And then like she said, the attendings are like right over there to help you as well. They obviously only give you patients that are maybe easier in second year, only up to the skills you learn, because like I said, each quarter you have new practicals, new skills that you learn. But by second year, you pretty much learn all the skills to perform a full exam. So then you're doing that. And I think that's the best way to learn, is seeing patients and practicing on different eyes that aren't your peers, because we're all healthy. So it gets boring seeing a bunch of healthy eyes. So I think that getting thrown in first year and then being kind of alone in second year is like the best blessing, because when I went to my externships, I felt prepared. Like I wasn't scared to see patients. It was, you do it so often, and then third year you're alone the whole time. And then obviously as the quarters progress, the expectations get a little higher. Attendings will start asking you like more questions, treatment questions, and you get more independence as the quarters go on. And you also have like to be a little bit faster with your speed and stuff. So I think overall the clinic experience is great. And like I said, I was really prepared when I left ICO.
Great, thank you. So third year, you're moving into the specialty coursework. And then as I mentioned earlier, your time in the clinic is going to increase. So, you know, from going from once a week to now being in the clinic, you know, multiple days a week. You'll continue in primary care, but you're going to get a chance to work in some of the specialty areas. I feel like, you know, in years past, this wasn't the case. It was more of, all right, that was reserved for fourth year. But now our students are able to be in P's, be in contact lens, be in low vision, and sort of getting a feel for what that patient population is like here at the IEI, but then also what that specialty is about. And so for some, that may be influential, because it may make or break somebody's decision to potentially apply for residency, you know, the next school year. So we encourage you to sort of explore, definitely consider different specialties. And if residency ends up being something you're doing, you know, great. I would say about anywhere between about a fourth to a third of our graduating class will go on to pursue a residency program, whether here or at another optometric institution in the United States. And so then you're going to continue, you know, working in the eyewear center as well. And so that transition I mentioned a little while ago from year 2 to 3 works as follows. So in May, usually the beginning of May, you're going to have a week of finals completing your second year. You'll have a week off. We just call them break weeks, a break week. And then the following week, then you start as a third year student. So your transition is really that week going from finals week, you know, ushering you on to within a week, a third year in the program. And the same thing happens for third year to fourth year. So it's definitely is a pretty quick turnaround time. So Sarah, year 3, any is the sort of thoughts? I know with being in the clinic, you know, more days a week. I think that's what students want. I know it's a lot sometimes for students, but how is it going from sort of, you know, once a week to now being in clinic multiple days a week?
Yeah, so definitely the first week of third year, we were all like, the first week in the clinic of third year is a mess. everyone is lost, especially in the specialties. We've never like been in those departments, and everyone's so nervous. Like, it's actually funny, but looking back at how we were the first day, I remember I left clinic and I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this 3 days. So it's definitely a jump, but in the end, it's actually like, then you get by like the third week, you're not like scared to go into clinic. I feel like at first you're a little scared. You get 3 new attendings, so it's just like a lot at once. But again, I also think it's good that you have different attendings because you can learn different things from everybody. Everyone does something, like, does things their own way and slightly differently. And all the professors have like something different to offer. So I think it's good that you shuffle each quarter, each shift, you're with a new attending. It's not the same person. Like I said, the fears are gone within the second to third week. You're fine. And it's honestly nice. You're with all your peers and your friends. They're all there. Like, we have group chats. We're texting, oh my God, I just saw this. What's going on? So don't worry, you're not alone. If you ever like stress, you can literally just go knock on the door, the student next door, and say, hi, like, question. And the patients don't even notice because they don't know what you're talking about. So it's fine. Don't be scared. In the end, the experience is the best. And like I said, that's where you learn the most. So obviously the fears of clinic will lessen. And I feel like we get a lot more experience in clinic compared to other schools. And I saw that at my first externship because I was the only one who wasn't like so scared to be seeing so many patients a day because of third year being in there 3 times a week.
Awesome. Thanks. And so to the year that Sarah is in now, 4th year, which is nothing but clinicals. And I know a lot of students just sort of love being in that year because I think it really gives them an opportunity to, of course, take everything they've learned for the past 3 years and be able to, apply it now in a clinical setting. So you have 4 externship rotations. One has to be in the IEI. So you're going to be at least one of your 4 quarters here on campus with us. And then you also will have opportunities to go across the US. We do have sites in Canada as well for students to go to. So you sort of go through a selection process. And I compare it to like the NFL drafts or football draft, and that it's not necessarily, all right, you pick this location and you get you get all of them that you want. But when I hear from students that they get the majority, most of the time they get the selections that are sort of on their list and places that they want to go. So Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit about the externship process and sort of how that worked and sort of maybe even a little bit more about the different sites that you're going to be at and have been at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the externship, like she said, it's like a little draft. Everybody, you get a select bucket, which is when you were at the IEI, and then you can pick 3 other ones. There is a variety in Canada. There's like 3 in Winnipeg. There's some in Toronto. They're all over the place. I personally didn't do any Canadian sets. I was going to do Toronto, but I'm from Windsor, which borders Detroit. So I was able to do 2 in Detroit, and then this way I can live at home to commute. So my first site was at the VA in Detroit. And the VA also, so that's like a veterans hospital. It used to be mandatory. It's no longer mandatory. Yeah. This year was the first year, which is also good. I feel like it helped a little bit with picking sites and getting the sites everybody wanted. And then right now I'm in Kentucky, which I know seems so random, but it's an amazing site. I'm at the school here and it's super fun. I'm getting the full American college experience because I never got that at my Canadian undergrad. So I'm with a friend here from ICO, and we've been to a football game, and everyone, like, they go crazy all day for their college football team. It's so intense. Like, we don't even go this hard for our NHL teams, but it's fine. I'm loving it. Yeah, and then I'm back at Chicago next, the IEI, and then my 4th site is back home again in Michigan. So I'm going to live at home and just commute. As far as getting the sites you wanted, I feel like the upper years above us are like, oh, it's so hard to get what you want. Everyone was so scared, but everybody I know has got what they wanted. So I feel like that's just people stress. Obviously, you kind of are competing with people who are in your bucket, but you can just talk to the students. We had like a group chat, hey, I want to do this site. And then someone else wanted to do it too. So you kind of just work around each other to do it maybe at a different time. You'll understand more when you're in it. I feel like it's kind of confusing. Now you're like buckets, like da da da. It's kind of a mess, but and I'm like, I didn't know anything until I was like in it. I'm like, wait, what does my bucket mean? Like, but yeah, there's a lot of options. Like she said, I never thought I would be in Kentucky. If you asked me the first year, I would never have came to Kentucky, and I'm so happy I did. It's a great experience. It's 10 short weeks. You're in clinic all day, Monday to Friday. And you're just seeing patients. So no tests, no quizzes, which is nice. And then we're just studying now for our boards. Our part 2 board is in December. So we're studying for that, but you're also learning all day when you're in clinic because you're seeing patients, like 10 patients a day or more. You're seeing a lot of the specialties as well at your site, which is again a great experience, especially if you want to do a residency. You can get exposure there to the different specialties. But yeah, as far as picking the site, tons of options, and don't stress about not getting your site. And it's also nice, I think, if there's one near your hometown to go there, and then you can save on some money to live at home. But
Yeah, definitely. And I think stressing that you're seeing patients, all day, and it's very different when you are in, I call it the real world versus sort of being in the academic world. Because here it's the education, it's an education institution, so the philosophy is going to be very different than when you're going to different practices. And a lot of students say, "Oh my gosh, when I come back to ICO, I have to remember to sort of adjust to how ICO wants me to do things versus how I was going in a practice." And so it's great that Sarah's able to see 10 plus, patients a day. You come back to ICO's scheduling, you may be getting a couple of patients a day or, per
yeah,
shift. And so it's very different. And students, I tell students usually like summer is better because you sort of continue with the ICO, and then the next 3 quarters, you're sort of doing it without that ICO umbrella. But I find that students, they're fine. They end up adjusting well because some things we want you to do only after you've gotten permission from your attending to do. In other places, they let you go ahead and do it because you've been trained to do it. And it's not that we don't trust you here. I think it's just the way our system is set up. But year 4, that's I think sort of the best year in the program. Everybody's at this point thinking about what they're going to do next. Sarah, have you decided if you're going to if you're doing a residency or if you are deciding to just graduate and go out and practice?
I haven't decided, but I might just be excited to graduate and go out and practice. But like she said, I have a couple of friends who are doing residency, so it goes either way. Honestly, the biggest thing of why people do residency is they just I feel like nervous to go out into the real world. They don't want to stop school yet, but I'm ready to be in the real world.
Okay, it's ready to get on the other side of that fence. Yeah, understandable. And I think that for those who are contemplating whether or not you do a residency, typically folks who are interested in working in the education side of it, so working in an optometry school or working in a hospital setting, residency is pretty much required to be in those 2 different areas. And so that's, sort of the prime reason. But there are some who, for instance, like working with children, and it doesn't mean you couldn't work with children as an optometrist without a residency, but the folks who really want to specialize with children end up doing a residency. So it just depends on sort of what you're interested in doing, and you'll find that your areas of interest will change over time. So you don't have to be committed to anything. And I know some folks are like, no, I don't want to do a residency. And next thing you know, I'm talking to my graduation. Oh yeah, I'm doing a residency at such and such. And it's like, great. So you figure out what works for you. And if you want, could you come back and do a residency? You can. But it happens. It's a really small percentage of ODs who end up doing that. So just know you have that option to pursue a residency. So we talked about, IEI already a little bit, but really, I equated to IEI is a great place to get your clinical education because of our patients. Our faculty are great, don't get me wrong, and I've said this in front of plenty of faculty, and they will agree with this statement as well. It's the patients who make you the great clinician that you become once you graduate, because it's what they are presenting with that helps you learn. You're going to learn a lot of things in the book, but to be able to then see a patient within a clinical setting who has this particular ocular issue, and then sometimes, in some cases, seeing patients who have very rare ocular issues that you may never see again in practice. So it's really the people who come through our doors each day that help our students. You're going to see a lot of patients who are healthy as well. I'm a patient there. I don't have any, ocular issues in terms of ocular disease. I don't have any systemic issues that's impacting my vision and health. So you definitely will see the gamma, but you'll definitely will see a lot of ocular issues within our clinic. And while it is, I was talking to an applicant earlier today during an interview, and I said, it's sort of unfortunate that you have patients who are coming in with these issues, but that's how you learn. It makes for a great learning environment. So Sarah, I don't know if you sort of want to talk about maybe any of the sort of interesting patient experiences that you had or cases, things that you may have learned about that seem to be rare, or just some of the diversity and ocular issues that you see in a patient in any given clinical shift.
Yeah, I think the first crazy thing is that you're just in your basic primary care shift in second year and you can see anything. So people come in, your patient, new patient, and they can't see out of their left eye. So right there, your second year, you honestly have no idea what is going on. And you obviously get walked through with your attending, but like she said, you see so much glaucoma. Also in third year, since you are forced to do all the specialties, it's also really good because you may think, oh, I hate kids, I wouldn't like pediatrics, but you have to do a rotation in there and you learn then, how to do an exam on kids. And also they have their own health issues as well. Or you'll be working with special needs children, which again is something that you do need practice on. And then you go into contact lenses and you're seeing patients who have to wear specialty lenses because they have keratoconus. And sometimes they try, like I said, to give the second years the easier patient. But I remember in second year, I had a patient who had this rare disorder that me and the attending were like Googling it because it was so rare to be in one eye. It's usually bilateral. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, I'm so sorry. This is the easiest patient that's here today. Because sometimes you just can't control it. I see so much crazy things. There's so much glaucoma at the II. And like she said, although it's sad to see like low vision patients and patients who have these like blinding diseases, it's such a great experience. I know when I went to my first site, I was at the veteran hospital, and none of the other students felt like really comfortable with glaucoma. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't feel comfortable with glaucoma? Like, all we saw was glaucoma. I saw glaucoma on every shift. One of my patients had glaucoma. Like, it's like not even, I don't even blink twice when I think glaucoma. So yeah, you see every disease. You'll see like crazy things like gunshot wounds. You'll see it all. And then in your fourth year, you do an urgent care rotation, which again is everything from front of the eye problems to back of the eye problems. And then you see all ages. So you see super old. I had a patient who was 101 and he had glaucoma, and he had to do like a test for his glaucoma. I'm like, he's 101. Like, why are we doing this test right now? It's not going to change. But you have 101 patients, and then you'll have like 2-year-old patients. So you see everything, all demographics, and since the school is kind of in just a really dense population area, that you're seeing so much eye disease. Like she said, especially if you go back to Canada, I feel like some of the stuff I'm seeing, I will never see again in Canada. Obviously, our healthcare system is a lot different. So yeah, I'm really thankful for it. And when you see it in clinic, you remember it. Like, you can read a book and you can learn about it, and you're like, oh, I don't know what this is, I forget. Once you have it in your chair and you are like, it's your responsibility, you don't forget that disease, you don't forget what treatment you gave, you don't forget what it looked like, exactly, the type of person who has it. Typically, a lot of diseases are with someone who's a certain race or age, or like if they have a certain systemic condition, or if they're overweight. There's all these things that are associated, and once it's in your chair, you don't forget. So it's really good to have all that exposure at ICO.
Great, thank you. Now, I did answer one question, but like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chats or unmute. So we'll go on if nobody has any questions. We'll talk just a little bit about, student life. Definitely a lot of things to do. I know school is the primary focus, but we always encourage students to consider, sort of the student life aspect of it. So on our campus, we do have a residential complex. So for, I would say a good majority of the first year class in any given year will stay in the RC. And then once they progress on to, second year, they move out. But there is a small number of students who, as second, third, and even fourth year students, when they're here for their externship rotation, choose to stay in the RC. And that's because it's literally right across the street from the school. The picture that I showed you at the beginning, it's what, 3 lanes of traffic, parking on each side of the street. And then, I mean, literally you're right across the street. So you can't really, get a shorter commute. Now, years ago, our residential complex actually was attached to the college, and that's when you virtually had no commute. You never even had to leave the building. So now there's at least, separation between the two. So it's an option for students. I know some students feel like, I don't want to, I stayed in dorms, I did residential housing and it didn't work out. The good thing is that because we're a standalone optometry school, everybody who's staying here during the academic year are optometry students. Given that the majority on the first year, you pretty much are on the same academic schedule. There's really no differences between any first year student. But then the second and third years and fourth years on campus who are in RC are very respectful to sort of your schedule. You all have pretty much the same finals week, so there is no difference there. But it is an option for students. And those who end up moving off campus, when they do, they sort of live in the surrounding areas and maybe live in an area that's about a 5 to 10 minute commute from here called the South Loop. So maybe they're renting a condo and with some of their classmates and then just commuting to campus. So student life, we have a variety of activities that take place in any given year. Now, of course, when COVID hit, just like everybody around the world, we shut down, we went virtual last academic year. We slowly brought back in-person activities, if you will. And so this year we're pretty much, everybody's on campus. There's no sort of like class that's a standalone virtual class. They're in person. Students can watch virtually if they want. We're doing events again. We had our annual ICO Olympics this past August. We're going to be doing an MCA night. They're looking to bring that back this spring. And then we did last year our eyeball, which I equate to sort of like a optometry prom, if you will. This year they're going to, well, this academic year, they're going to have it again. So we are a really engaged campus. And I encourage students, when you get here, you'll have an opportunity to meet with reps from the different student organizations and decide what you're passionate about. But I find that students do an average of maybe about 2 to 3 clubs during their time here at ICO. Sarah, what were you involved in terms of student organizations?
So I was in the Canadian club, of course.
Of course.
I was I was in the private practice club. And then I was in ABLE, which was a new club actually, I think the year I started. That's more of like a mental health club. So they do things like yoga. We had actually an instructor lead a yoga class, candle making, pumpkin painting, things to kind of get your mind off it. And then I'm also an academic coach, and I'm part of that. I would run the pupil lounge, which is a new thing actually this year. And it's just like a little hangout area on campus that people go to. There's free food and drinks. So people just come and take some snacks between classes. There's music playing. It's just like a relaxing area. But yeah, everyone pretty much does 2 to 3 clubs, and there's a club for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot of different student organizations, and what you don't find, guess what? You can start one because, like Sarah said, we've ABLE was one. We've had Queer Eye. We had our Black Student Union. I would say within the last about 3 to 4 years, sort of at least 6 different clubs have sort of crept up on campus, which is great because we don't expect that. All right, we're going to have everything a student may want or be interested in doing. So we encourage students, listen, if you get enough folks to serve on a board and you can get a charter going, why not present it to student affairs and see if you can get another club started out on campus. So that's always that opportunity as well. So support services out and saying that we offer academic and professional services for students. And I would encourage students, when you look at things like tutoring, note-taking services, you know, students being like, all right, you know, do I really need tutoring? You know, I think I can do this. Tutoring is at no cost to you. And I think, you know, my advice to students is it's better to hit the ground running and dial it back. So getting tutors, working with folks, getting an understanding of what is that expectation once you get here as a student? What are exams like? You know, you've only experienced what your exams are for your university. How do ICO structure their exams? Our exams are like at 8 in the morning. And so for some who don't like that idea of getting up at 8 in the morning, you know, it's an adjustment, but um, you definitely sort of adjust to that schedule and have an understanding of, you know, what that's like. And so having tutors and academic coaches can sort of give you some insight to what you can expect, especially as a first year and you're making that transition. In terms of professional services, we do have a career development department. It's a one-woman shop. Daphne Anderson is our director of career development, but she does a great job of really trying to help students navigate this process. And she starts with you even in year one. And that year one session is really about, you know, learning how to network. This was from our event this past April. We do what's called the Practice Opportunity Symposium, where we bring alumni and vendors from optometric and ophthalmic industry partners to campus to talk to you about their services. We have speakers on campus who are telling you about their modality or their specialty in practice and really share with you a lot of great information. This networking event, there was also opportunities for you to potentially land a position. As a first year, you're like, I'm not necessarily looking into it, but by year three, it's probably something in the back of your mind of where am I going to practice? What type of opportunities am I looking for? So you get a chance to go, you know, meet a lot of different people, and then even potentially, you know, that next year start reaching out to folks about opportunities. So it definitely is a great event. Attendance is mandatory for all students except those who, of course, are going to be out on externship. But it serves as a great way to, especially during your first year, meet people who, oddly enough, will probably be coming back year after year, talking to you about opportunities that they have in their practice. So I think we just had a question. What are the benefits of maintaining a high GPA rather than just going for a pass other than scholarships? That's a pretty good question. I would say some of the benefits, you know, for sure, and sort of when it comes to the grades of being in a university, scholarships, you know, are one. Um, and and I would say what the past doesn't gives us though, with the grade, we sort of have an idea of your performance in the class, you know, A, B, C, D, E, or F, depending on sort of your university scale. A pass tells us that a student had at least a minimum of a C or better, again, depending on your universities. I know some universities say a pass is a grade of D or better. Um, so having a pass versus a grade really doesn't help us with any insight. Now, if you, let's say you took microbiology and get a D, um, you know, you'd have to take that prerequisite again, but it helps us get an understanding of how well you're performing. So I know a lot of institutions went to a pass, I would say pass or no pass versus a pass fail option when COVID hit. And we were okay with that spring of 2020, where students in some cases were forced to take a pass grade. But since COVID, since that initial phase of COVID, a lot of universities made it optional for students. So we encourage students, if you have the option to do a pass grade, um, we would rather you decline that option and actually get the letter grade for the course. So I hope that answers your question. Um, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Awesome. High GPA in optometry school. Well, you know, maintaining a high GPA in optometry school, so I have two different thoughts of philosophy, but I'll ask Sarah sort of your thoughts on maintaining a high GPA in optometry school. And then I'll sort of share my thoughts on that. But what would you say to that question, Sarah?
I don't think maintaining a high GPA is like as necessary as it is in undergrad. In undergrad, obviously, you're keeping your marks as high as possible to get into optometry school. Once you're in optometry school, you're there. Obviously, I do think try your hardest, maintain there's like a minimum GPA requirement to move on. I would try, when you're coming into optometry school, you obviously are used to having good grades. You're used to being near the top of your class. I would continue to strive for that, but I also wouldn't like break your back. I feel like it's good at this point. It's not necessary to be, you don't need to get 90s across the board. You're going to be fine. You're still going to be a good clinician. And at the end of the day, maybe it'll help you with residencies. But honestly, I feel like just coming from ICO is a huge step to get you into your residency already. And they also look at a bunch of other things. Like she said, the campus life is really fun as well. I wouldn't miss out on things. I feel like I did more in grad school than I did in undergrad. Undergrad, I was still like so in my books. And I feel like now, you know, you get burnt out. Just mentally, I feel like it's good to take breaks, go to the gym, join the fun events that happen at the school, go to the little events during the day, go get the free lunch that they're offering. Like there's a lot of things going on. I don't think you need to maintain the highest GPA. It doesn't really get you any benefit anyways. So yeah, I'm more of enjoy your time, still do well. You're going to obviously want to do well. It's in your nature. If you're here, it's just in your nature, and you're actually going to like what you're learning now. Versus undergrad, you're kind of forced into certain classes. Here, you're going to want to do well anyways, but you're going to also have a bad test. And also, a C and a B and all the letter grades are different in America than they are in Canada. So you're going to get a grade that you're like, oh my God, like this is a B, but it's actually a C in America. So just be ready for that.
Yeah, the grades
it's different. Yeah, and I had this exam, I finished, I'm like, oh, you're not too bad. And one of the students like, that's a C. I'm like, oh, nice. But
yeah,
okay, you're gonna get a bad grade and you're gonna get some really good grades. And a lot of the classes have buffer as well, which I didn't really expect. Labs count for grades, so just showing up, you're getting like a free 10% just showing up to labs. A lot of like easy little lab quizzes and assignments, all helps for your grade. So exams aren't everything. A lot of exams are only like 15 to 20% each exam. So if you do have a bad exam, it's okay. There's so many resources, such as the tutoring and the coaching, peer tutoring from an upper year, seeing the professor to do better on the next exam. And even if you do like fail one exam in the class, you can still end the course with an A because there is buffer room. And there's some opportunity for bonus marks in first year as well, which is really nice. So.
Yeah. See, I was going to talk to the point that Sarah mentioned. So in our program at ICO, all students are required to maintain a 2.25 GPA. So that's like, you know, at about a C or higher when it comes to coursework. So, you know, outside of scholarships, which they're scholarships from different optometric companies who have scholarships marketed for optometry students. You know, it could be just that sense of you as a student want to maintain good grades. You know, once you graduate as an OD, just like with really any professional, whether they were a 2.5 GPA or they were the 4.0 GPA, they were the top student. I mean, your patients won't know. It's really about the care that you're providing. So we want students to do their best. This isn't to say we want students to get here and you know, do whatever. Your academic success is also part of our success as well, because we are commissioned and accredited by sort of a governing body. So actually two governing bodies, one for just being an optometric educational institution and just one being an educational institution. So we do want our students to succeed. You know, other than at graduation and being able to say you graduated cum laude, sigma cum laude, you know, we don't look at it at ICO as at, all right, we want our students to work their fingers to the bone and everybody, you know, earning all A's. We really want our students to embrace academic life and also embrace student life and doing their best. So that's why we provide a variety of resources for our students. But you know, typically students are going to make, there's just some people who just want to have, you know, those stronger grades and are striving to be to do well with their academics, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there are some who I'm okay with getting a B minus in a course, or even, optics was hard and I got that C and I earned that C and I'm okay with that. So I think it depends sort of from the student's perspective, their thoughts and desires about their education and their grades. I know there are some folks who are very serious about earning all A's and others who are okay with that C. And I tell students, definitely don't be too hard on yourself, because it can then be very daunting to sort of keep up to this, high level of academic achievement, um, and then potentially missing out on some things that are also that secondary part of going to optometry school, which is what Sarah alluded to, is being involved in student activities, being engaged, because these are going to be uh, probably some of your best friends that you're going to meet when you're in school as well, who become lifelong friends. So you still want to find that fine balance between understanding that school is important, as well as then the social aspects of being in the program. So, all right. I'm so looking forward to that. Yes, we're looking forward to you looking forward to that. So awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about admissions. A couple of things that I'll sort of go through here. Majors, majors don't matter. I would say most of my Canadian students that are coming in are typically going to be in the biological sciences. Rarely do I get a student sort of outside of the sciences. But personally, we don't, as an institution, have a major that students are required to take. Um, Degree requirements, we are one of a handful of optometric institutions that don't require students to have a degree. Now, you are required to at least complete 90 semester hours. And if you're coming in as a non-degree, we're going to look at your academics a little bit closer, because you're not going to have 3 years of study under your belt. You're just going to have 2. So we want to make sure that you're going to be prepared for the program if you're coming in as a non-degree. And as you can see from that percentage there, again, majority of our students are going to come in on a degree track. Requirements, this is on our website as well, but usually the thing to know about requirements is really the grade requirement. I don't know if the University of Alberta is on a plus-minus system or not, but we take C's and higher. So if they, by chance, if your percentage converts to a C minus or lower, then we would come back and request that you retake that course. So if you have any questions about that, you can always email me. I know we have like a grading scale floating around here, and I can also look at it online. But again, if that number converts to their letter grade of a C minus or lower, then you would be required to take that prerequisite again. So yeah, so those are our prerequisites. Only thing to note, organic chemistry, no lab is required, but if the lab is built into the course, that's fine. Sometimes in terms of English courses here, there are other courses that may be intensive writing designated at your institution. We can fulfill those for English. So maybe you took a biology course that was a writing intensive course, or a history course that was designated as writing intensive. We can use that for English. So anytime you have questions about a substitute for a course, you can email us at admissions@ico.edu. Hi. Okay, so somebody was asking some of the others. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. So most of you all, like I said, are coming in as science majors, so you're going to have a lot of these additional science courses. AP and biochemistry, I recommend, because you get that in the first year. Sarah, I don't know if you took AP and biochem in undergrad. If you did you find it beneficial having that? If you didn't, do you wish you would have? Any advice for
Yeah,
students on that?
I did take all of the courses on that list. Definitely beneficial to have. First year, you do have an anatomy class. You have three anatomy classes, 3 physiology classes, and 3 biochem classes. Obviously, they're more advanced than what you take in undergrad, but there is a lot of like core material that you've already learned, stuff you've even learned in high school is in those courses. So I definitely recommend taking those. It'll just help you in first year.
All right, good deal. So by the numbers, so This past year, our applications actually declined, and we're still trying to figure out why that happened, but we still brought in a class of 110 students. And this slide here gives you some general numbers. And usually what I tell students to take away is really if your GPAs are typically at a 3.0 and higher, and we do a GPA conversion for our Canadian students. And so this typically is about a B or higher. Your application and your OATs are usually like in the 300s and higher, and everything else looks good. You stand a fairly good chance of getting invited to interview and being accepted into the program. Now, we had some students who come in with GPAs below 3.0, usually in maybe that, 2.6, 2.7 is typically sort of the lowest, but every student is different. And sometimes applicants say, well, all right, how did somebody get in, with a grade, GPA lower than a 3.0? And as you all, know, when you start university, it's an adjustment period. And so some students may have had issues, sort of in that adjustment phase, or maybe something happened in their academics at some point. Maybe they feel ill, maybe a parent fell ill, or there was a loss in the family that can impact your academic performance. So really what we look at is, if you started and you had a bad transition from high school to university, and that first year didn't go well, but you made improvements year 2, year 3, and if we have anything for year 4, so your grades increase, but maybe you just couldn't get that GPA up above a 3, that trend in grade gets taken into consideration as well. So if you are someone who's maintained a good GPA, or your GPA started low and went up, or maybe you had a good solid GPA, maybe you dipped, but then you progressed back up, that gets taken into consideration in the application process as well. So we'll look at overall GPA, but we'll see how that GPA came about. So it's definitely ways for students to gain admission into school. If you're somebody whose grades may be sort of below a B average, I always encourage you to reach out to the admissions team. And we do counseling sessions all throughout the year. Don't, sometimes students wait till they are ready to apply. I was like, I'm about to apply. Can I do a counseling session? Call us now. Call us before you're planning to, actually hit submit on your application, so we can give you some advice. Because sometimes we may say, well, you may have to do some additional schooling. So we don't want to, sort of leave somebody with that bad impression. I'd rather you work with me earlier in the process, and I can sort of offer you advice and guide you along the way in ways to make your application more competitive. I'm assuming you all know, but I put it out here new. The 60-day waiting period between retakes. It used to be 90 days. If you took the OAT and you wanted to retake, you had to wait 90 days. It is now 60 days, which is sort of good and bad, I think, because on average, it takes students, they tell us it takes them about 2 months to prepare. So anybody who finds themselves in a retake situation, before you decide to sign up and, all right, take it, 60 days later, I always encourage folks to reassess, what worked, what didn't work, and come up with a plan to improve scores. Um, and my advice is the information that's in blue when it comes to sort of just taking the OAT the first time around. And as a club, I suspect you may have had sessions where members of the club talked about the OAT and their experience. I think it's good for students to hear that, but realize your experience may be your own. So uh, getting the advice of others is good, but you want to make sure that you come up with a good plan for you to be successful with the OAT. And I find that a, a good, I can't even put a percentage on it, but I feel like a good majority of the applicants I see from Canada actually do well on the OAT. And I think it's potentially how the way your university system is structured in terms of courses, um, that I rarely see a Canadian student with what I would consider bad OATs, and that's typically anything like 270s across the board and lower. I rarely see that. So, but just do what you can to do well on this exam. There are a lot of different um, uh, testing software that's out there, programs that you can use, books. Figure out what's going to work for you. And try not to invest, I would say, like necessarily too much money if you can avoid that, but really sit down, figure out what works for you in your science courses and apply that for the OAT. And Sarah, I won't even ask you about the OAT because I know it's been so long ago. You're probably like, Tisha, I don't even remember.
Gone from my memory.
I know. I feel like after you get in school, everything in the past is like it's in the past. I'm just worrying about today and then potentially tomorrow as well, and sort of keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things to think about that will influence an application. And some of these, not so much as more as the numbers, but communication is important. We're going to be assessing that in your written communication, your verbal communication when you interview. Knowledge of the profession is important as well. We just want to make sure you understand what you're getting into essentially. We don't have a minimum number of shadowing hours. I've had students tell me they've shadowed for 8 hours and knew optometry was for them and didn't shadow anymore. Um, I try to encourage students to do a little bit more. It doesn't hurt. I want to make sure you know what you're getting into because it is a huge investment of time and money. So it doesn't hurt to observe more, to work in a profession if you can. And then your letters are going to be important. Your interview with us is maybe 45 to 60 minutes. Um, and so your letters give us more insight to who you are. So your academic letter, your ODs, if you've been able to actually work with them, and even in shadowing, I feel like ODs have that opportunity to be able to assess a student and give us some good feedback. So these are going to be people who've had longer engagement periods with you who can give us a sense. So it's important to make sure you pick people who can, offer you that strong letter of recommendation. And one thing that helps your application is if you do the strength and weaknesses analysis. Um, look at your grades, look at your experience, think about what you're going to be putting in your application and fill in any areas that may be void. So if you haven't done enough shadowing, try to get some more shadowing hours under your belt because there are some programs that do require a minimum number of shadowing hours. Does ICO accept academic references from TAs or does it have to be from a professor? So we prefer a professor, a science professor. However, if you have a good relationship with the TA, we'll accept that letter as long as the professor signs off on that letter as well. So yes to that question. So yeah, so thank you, for that question, because I think that's pretty good. Like I said, I know a lot of big universities, sometimes you may not be able to engage as much with your professor, but having a TA write the letter is fine, and having the professor sign off on it works for us. In terms of deadline, the biggest thing is don't wait to apply. Applying early gives you the opportunity, one, to get the process, out the way sooner. Two, it gives you a chance to work with the school. So if you apply May 1st and our recommendation is to take more grades, you really don't have any window to do so. Or if you take the OAT at the deadline, it may take about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks for us to get it. And then if you're in a range where, all right, yeah, we want to invite you to interview and you're looking at potentially June interviewing, realize that you need to be in the US in about 2.5 months. So you have to be prepared to make that transition. And as international students, you are required to submit a letter of support, a letter of financial support showing that you and or your parents, or you have a line of credit indicating that you can pay for that first year tuition. So sometimes that may take time to go through that process. So I would encourage all my Canadian applicants to apply sooner in the process. And it allows you that time you need, but it also allows us time if we need to work with you throughout that process. And scholarship dollars, beginning of the process, the pot to the fullest, as we go through the process, because we're rolling admissions, it starts to shrink. So we're starting to award scholarships, students are starting to deposit, so they are pulling funds from that bucket. So again, applying early is good. I did a talk last week with a group and somebody said, is November still early? Yeah, November is still early. I sort of don't have a date where I say, all right, this is late in the process, but I encourage students, if you're thinking about, all right, maybe March or April, I would say, call me and let's talk about it and sort of discuss why you're waiting to that late to apply. Sometimes there are good reasons, but usually I say, even if you apply early, if we need something from you, we'll just put your application on hold. So you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about it being rejected because something's missing from your application. And you guys probably talked about this as a club. I know sometimes they talk, they've had folks who've gone through the process talk about Optime Cast. It's fairly straightforward. It's just a lot of reading, as with anything, as with any application. The big thing to note from Optime Cast is you don't have to wait for your letters to be in the system to hit submit. You can complete all your information, have your schools in, hit submit, and Optimecast still needs to go through a verification process for your grades. And some of you who started this process will know this. They will ask you one of two things. You enter your grades and have them verify, or they enter the grades and then you verify. Whichever way you choose, just be mindful of, if you need to do the verification, it may take you time to go through it. Sometimes it's easy just to type it in yourself and then have them verify. Just because at that time, we're in the cycle, they're usually are pretty good about getting back that verification done, but I always encourage students, just hit submit. You can always see if the letters come in, and if by chance a letter is missing, we'll just email you and say, hey, this letter didn't come in. Be sure to reach out to your professor or your OD. And so when we do our review, majority of students actually get invited to interviews. So of that 599, oh my gosh, I want to say it had to be at least 300 plus who ended up, maybe closer to 400. Yeah, it was about 599. So I probably would say about 400 plus students who get invited to interview. That number may have been around 450 or so. There are some folks who will get, their application denied up front. And then from that, we ended up interviewing a little over, I want to say 300 students, and accepted about 259, maybe 260, and ended up with a class of 110. So really in the process, a fair number of students will get invited to interview, and not everybody chooses to interview. So that's why I encourage folks to apply early and get those decisions done. So somebody asked about a non-science professor. Yes, a non-science professor is okay. And so maybe it's the English professor, maybe it is a professor who you had a history course with. Somebody who can really speak to your academics and motivation for optometry and passion for education is great. And do letters of reference need to be received prior to being invited to interview? Yes, they do. It just depends. Optimecast will allow you 4 letters. So if you have an OD, a professor, and 2 supervisors, maybe people you've worked with on campus or outside of campus, as long as we're getting the 2 letters we need, if these 2 are still pending, that's fine, because we really want to see what your academic letter and your OD says. How many entrance scholarships does ICO give out each year? Well, we have 4 to 5 different types. My gosh, I would say it really just depends on the class. Because like I said, we look at OAT, GPA, and extracurricular activities. So I would have to sort of look and sort of come back and email you guys sort of with that number, but quite a few students do get awarded scholarships. Our highest is our presidential, and that's a half tuition scholarship. And typically you're in that 3.7 to higher GPA range. Your OATs are typically 370s and higher across the board. And again, you have good extracurricular experiences, and your letters of recommendation are glowing as well. But then we have scholarships that range from, say, 3,000 per year to about 15,000 per year, which is still, over 4 years can be a nice chunk of money that goes towards your tuition bill that you don't have to pay. These are some great questions. Thank you all. All right, so I'm trying to make sure I catch up with those. I think I get everybody's questions in here. Awesome. Good. All right. I think I get all the questions. Awesome. Interview day. You know, we love for people to come to campus, but we know some folks, you know, scheduling, depending on, you know, now I don't think there's too many COVID restrictions still out there, but you know, who knows what's going to happen maybe this winter at the time that somebody's coming to interview. We love to have you on campus because you get a chance to see the institution. You know, I think that's best for students because I know it's all about fit. You want to see yourself being here as a student. So um, if you come to campus or whether you do it virtually, you get a chance to engage with our students, which is another important factor. So you're able to be with their students in group sessions, asking questions. You know, no ICO administrators are around, and they'll give you, you know, their perspective and their experience. You know, like Sarah said earlier, it is a challenging program, but it's very doable. You know, students are always willing to share sort of what worked for them, and it becomes sort of then learning from that. And then when you get here as a student, figuring out, all right, what's going to work for you. Now, after you interview, you usually get your decision within 1 to 2 weeks via email, and a deposit is required. Our deposit is currently $750, and it's due within 30 days from the date of your decision. That's going your decision date that's going to be on your decision letter. Sarah, any advice for them on interview day?
Honestly, be yourself. I know it sounds cliche, but I feel like the main thing that they're looking for here, like your interviewer, they already know your grades, like volunteer work, your part-time job. They can see all that stuff. It's open file. So I feel like at the interview, they're just looking to see who you are. Are you going to be able to communicate effectively with your patient, make your patient feel comfortable? And at the end of the day, I feel like that's the reason that ICO is such a family, is because everybody does have very good communication skills and is like super friendly, understanding. And I feel like that's why we do all get along, because we all have that similar trait. So I would just be yourself, let your personality shine. It's a really laid back interview. You're kind of just having a conversation. Obviously, if there's some things you want to make note of, like some research you did or some really good volunteer experiences that you did that shaped you into who you are, definitely bring them up. But I would definitely just be yourself and try so hard to just calm your nerves, because they really just want to get to know you. And it's not like a make or break at that interview. It's honestly just to see your ability to communicate. So try not to let your nerves take over. But I feel like it's a very relaxing environment that once you're like 10 minutes in, I feel like you're like, okay, Sarah was right. That's what you'll say. I'll be like, Sarah was right. I shouldn't have been nervous.
Yeah, I would say this as well. I tell all applicants, really, it is a conversation. I did 2 interviews today, and you know, I tell students, don't be nervous. I understand why you would be nervous, and yes, you're going to have some level of nerves, but it isn't as if we're drilling you about things. Now, if you have, say, a low score on the OAT, or we saw a history of grades where maybe there was a trend for a term that you got low grades, you know, we're going to ask about that. I mean, that's just our job. We want to hear from you. If you didn't put in your application, you know, we're going to want to know sort of what was happening. How did you resolve that? What did you learn from that experience? How did it make you a better student, a better person, depending on what the issue is? And just realize that's a part of life. People are going to want to sort of know some things that you feel like, all right, that was just a negative. I have so many positives. And it's not to just highlight that one thing, but it's for us to get an understanding of really sometimes how you've learned from that experience. And I think sometimes students sort of miss that in the interview, but also come with your questions. We get information on our website. We have Instagram takeovers. I feel like there's a lot of information out there, but there's always going to be something that you're going to want to know. When students say they don't have questions, I'm always concerned, because I'm like, I know there has to be something that's important to you as a student that you want to know. So definitely come prepared with questions. Now, if you have no questions, I mean, that doesn't mean that you're going to get marked down on your interview, but I feel like the majority of students will have a list of questions, and whether it's just a couple or sometimes one of the people I interviewed today probably had at least a good 6 or 7 questions, which I thought was great because I love talking about ICO. So um, realize that most of the people you're going to interview with are faculty, but you may have administrators like myself, our assistant dean for student success. She does interviews, and so we're not ODs, um, but know that, there's a good chance that you're going to have a professor who may be interviewing you, or dean of student affairs, who's not in the, who does some classroom work, but mostly is now on the side of administration. So FYI. And then, so just a couple of tidbits. So we have, and this information is on our website. So we have a summer program, and we've had maybe a handful of Canadians, come and participate. It's a week-long program that we do in July. Um, we do a virtual fair once in October, once in June. If anybody is applying next cycle, I say this is great because this event is free and you can meet reps from all 23 schools and colleges of optometry. So like I said, I'll send this information over. If you want to, take a picture of the slides, you can, but it's a great way to come and get your questions asked and answered. And we have students and faculty and folks from different areas of the college in the virtual chat room for students to chat with. Visit with us. We're hoping to do an open house next summer and have people, back on campus with us. And that virtual fair should actually be June of 2023, not 2022. But we also, as I've been saying throughout the program, encourage you to reach out to us. We do virtual counseling sessions. We do in-person sessions. If somebody's in town and looking to do a tour, give us a heads up and we'll be happy to schedule a tour of our campus. And if people have extended time in Chicago, we also allow prospective students to shadow in our clinic. So you have different ways that you can engage with us. And our job is to help you navigate this process. For some, it's very straightforward. Others want some assistance along the way. And, we're here to be that for you, to answer those questions, to maybe give you some information that you're hearing about. All right, this process, I heard this in some of the optometry chats out there. Sort of, how am I supposed to navigate the application process? What will be beneficial for me in terms of courses to take? That's what our job is. And I include financial aid on here for all of my presentations. I know financial aid doesn't, we don't have financial aid options for our Canadian students. Um, but if you have any questions about financial aid, I know sometimes we have dual citizens, and so maybe some students are interested, dual citizens between the US and Canada, interested in that process. So Lauren's email is out there as well. So the last thing I'll leave you guys with, well, that's good, but that actually wasn't what I was going to say, and that's good too. But I was going to say, if you want to join our mailing list, if you send us, if you scan a QR code, join our mailing list, we can send you some information. And then we also send you events when we're having things on campus. We let you know when we are going to have that open house and when we're doing those virtual fairs so you can engage with us. So that's really, it for my presentation. I don't know if you have any parting words there, any advice that you want to leave the club with?
No, I can drop my email though if you guys have questions. I know sometimes things arise maybe as you're doing your application, or if you do get accepted and then you're just wondering, like I said, the little things of transitioning from Canada to America. So I can drop my email here.
All right, awesome. That would be great. And like I said, I will send this presentation probably next week to you guys so you can have it. But if you have questions for Sarah, she's available. If you want to talk to any of our students who actually graduated from the University of Alberta who are here, you can let me know. Like I said, we have a Canadian Student Association, so I'm sure we will have at least a handful of students who graduated from that university as well, who can sort of offer some insight about their transition from University of Alberta to ICO. But I thank you all for your time. I love the questions. I feel like I give a lot of information, but I love it when people ask me questions because I just want to make sure I'm providing as much information as possible to you as you all are deciding on which optometry school you're going to apply to. So I hope to see some of your applications in the near future. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now.